Hi, I'm Eric Lichtenberg, and I was a Glock certified armorer for over 10 years. I was
What
a
does
Glock
that mean, certified armor?
So I was certified by Glock to break down and take apart Glocks and replace parts and other things. And I was also a law enforcement dealer, and I am a California Department of Justice firearms instructor and a Texas CHL instructor, as well as a Utah CHL instructor.
So you know your stuff.
I try. I try.
I thought Glocks you don't have to clean.
So Glocks, they are very, very good at running even when they're dirty. So to be honest, it doesn't hurt to break apart and clean a Glock, especially if it's something you're going to be using for conceal and carry, because if it's not clean, then you're going to be getting dirt and soot and all that kind of carbon buildup on your clothes as well. So it's important to keep clean, but you also, at the same time, you don't want it too oily, because if you're carrying it for concealed carry and putting it in your clothes, you don't want it to look like you were carrying tater tots in your pocket, because it's too oily and greasy. So there's a good trade-off. A lot of people have a tendency to over-oil their guns, and so we don't really need to do that so much. It's just a matter of just getting it clean, getting the carbon off, and then having a little bit of oil to prevent corrosion.
And how often would you say you should do something
So
like that?
generally, I will clean my Glock about every 400 or 500 rounds. It's not, and this is not by any means a standard, but I very rarely clean my Glock if I'm not actively using it. So if I take it out, if you're carrying it in your pocket or that sort of thing, you always want to make sure there's no pocket lint or anything that's gotten inside of the barrel. So it's important to understand your firearm and make sure that it is safe to use. So
Let's say you are putting your gun away. You know you're not going to use it for a couple months. Would you want to clean it before you put it away?
Yeah, and especially if you live in a humid environment too, because you can get a lot of corrosion that can attribute to moisture and humidity. So if you don't have a proper amount of lubricant to protect it from the corrosion, then you can experience some pitting and corrosion. So,
What are some signs that you need to clean your gun?
well, if you've got a lot of carbon buildup, mainly kind of around the barrel, muzzle area, around the ejection port, if you get a lot of carbon there, you can kind of keep it clean. If you open it up and it just looks really dirty, if you're having functionality problems, that could also be a sign that it needs to be cleaned as well.
How long should your Glock last? You know how, like, you have a car, right? Mm-hmm. You got only a certain number of miles out of it.
So I have some Glock Generation 3 that I've had for since the Generation 3 came out. So it's been quite a few years, and no problems. They work just fine. Some of the other Glocks I have had some problems with. They need to be kept more clean than others, and those would be like the long slides, just mainly because there's more chance for it to get a lot of friction from carbon buildup. So those you have to keep cleaner more often.
So if you're cleaning every 500 rounds, when do you retire your gun?
When it stops working or becomes unreliable. So if the gun starts to just not be reliable, then it's time to either have a competent gunsmith go through it and repair what needs to be repaired, or just replace the gun.
So when you say reliable, I mean, it might crap out on you when you really need it. Mm-hmm. And then it's too late to know whether your gun's
right.
reliable.
And much like a car, you're not going to know there's problems with it if you don't drive it. If the car's just parked in the driveway and it's just sitting there, you're not going to know if there are problems with that vehicle. You're not going to get in it and let's drive to New York in that car after it's been sitting for 4 years, right? So the same thing goes with your firearm. If you're using your firearm on a regular basis, you will know it much like you know the personality of your vehicle and whether you can trust that vehicle to take you on those long or short durations, out of town, away from home, that sort of thing.
So you can kind of get a gut instinct.
Mm-hmm. Get a gut instinct for it. And if it comes to the point where, you know what, I don't trust taking my car to San Francisco, I don't trust taking my car to Denver, I'm going to go with a rental car. Maybe it's time to replace the gun, or have a competent gunsmith go through it and get it functioning the way it needs to.
If you didn't clean your gun yourself, how much would it cost to get your gun cleaned?
It probably depends on where you go. There's a few places that would do that for you. I know here locally we have Sportsman's Warehouse that now has a gunsmithing department that will do gun cleaning services. They even have subscription services, I believe, where you can go and just on a regular basis go and take it in, and it just bills you a monthly fee type of thing.
How much is that usually?
I'm not certain, so I don't want to.
This is kind of a total DIY thing, right? You don't need to go.
Yeah, you don't really need to do it. Your owner's manual. There are plenty of YouTube videos out there as well that can show you these things. So it's more of just whether or not you're comfortable with it. If you are not comfortable with it, then find someone that you know and trust that may understand and know firearms well, or go into any gun store, and they're more than likely going to be able to help point you in the right direction to basically be able to do this yourself. First off, you want to make sure the gun's pointed in a safe direction. Now, you really need to understand what a safe direction is, because if you live in an urban environment, there may not be a safe direction. So you want to make sure that your muzzle is pointed in the safest direction. What that means is if there is an incident where the gun were to discharge unintentionally, it's not going to destroy anything that you cherish or someone you love. Keep in mind that guns can travel through walls, floors, ceilings. So if you live in an urban environment, it's best to just really understand how your firearm works and make sure you're handling it in the safest possible manner. So keeping your gun pointed in a safe direction, you will pick up the firearm and keep your finger away from the trigger. Do not put your finger on the trigger. Now, we will need to in just a moment to take the tension off of the firing pin, but right now we're going to keep our finger away from the trigger. We want to make sure that the magazine well is empty. So we depress our magazine release latch. There's no magazine in there, but there may be a round in the chamber. So we want to verify that that is indeed empty. So I would do that by pulling the slide back, verifying that the chamber is empty, magazine well is empty. And now that we're confident that the firearm is unloaded, I'm going to go ahead and take the tension off the slide, release that slide latch, and allow the slide to come forward. Now, this part's important. What we have to do is we have to take the pressure off of the firing pin. So we have to do that by dry firing the gun. Okay, now that the gun has been dry fired, you can see that the trigger is in its rearward position. Now, there's this little latch right here on the side of the slide, and this is on both sides of the Glock. So what that is there's a component that's now pressed up against that latch. So we have to take the tension off of that latch. Now, I can do that by putting my thumb and my forefingers around the gun like this and basically pulling back. So now I have taken the tension off of this latch. You can see how the slide is slightly pulled back. Using my other hand, those two latch buttons I'm going to pull down simultaneously on both sides. Now I can let go of the slide, pull the trigger, slide comes completely off. So you're going to pull the slide back like that. Okay, now use those two buttons, pull them down, bring it down a little bit so it's kind of going too high. There we go. Okay, now with that down, let go of the slide. Now pull the trigger. Your slide should come off.
Cool.
When I get down to this point, I have my guide rod and spring, and we want to remember how that goes in. You can see how there's a little button pressing through right there, and this part's just flat. So that's pushing up against the barrel. So I'm going to take out my guide rod and spring, and now I can just use my fingers to pop up the barrel and get it out. Okay. Now this is typically as far as an average person would ever have to break down their Glock. They'd never really have to go further than this unless they need to replace a component or a part. The next thing you want to use is both a solvent and an oil. Now, a lot of times you can buy, this is a cleaning kit for a rifle, but you can find these at various stores where they come with your solvent and your oil and your cleaning brush. For a handgun, you could find a little kit like this for around, less than $15, and it'll have everything you need in it to clean your handgun. This one here, this is something you can buy at Walmart called Powder Blast. You can buy, and in fact, all this stuff you can buy at Walmart. You've got Hops number 9, which is a great solvent, Powder Blast, which is a good solvent. Now, next you can do a couple of different things. You can use a cleaning rod kit like this. So you can buy either of these two products as well. These are typically at Walmart as well. Hops makes one called the Bore Snake, and it's caliber specific to whatever caliber you're using it in. And you can also get Bore NATO, which is an Allen product, and it again is caliber specific for what you're going to use it for. You don't have to get this fancy with it. It just depends on what you want to do. Otherwise, just a regular cleaning brush and kit will work just fine. So now what I'm going to do is I am going to take, you can use an old toothbrush if you want. You can buy a brush like this, which is specifically for cleaning guns. And you can just take that brush and dip it into your solvent. Tap off any excess. And you want to be careful too around clothing and other stuff because this will splatter a little bit. But you can come in here, kind of in your area of the gun, clean out any kind of gunk and grap, just right in that area there, along the slide rails, cleaning out anything that might have accumulated in there. Now on the slide, you can kind of come in here. Now you don't want to get too much stuff in these holes. A lot of people make the mistake of putting oil in here. If you put oil in there, that can slow down the firing pin, giving you light primer strikes. It also allows dirt and dust and debris to get in there, and it gets really gunky. If you've ever sprayed WD-40 on a door hinge, you probably know what I'm talking about. It'll get dirty, gross, and grimy. So you don't want to put any kind of thing that's going to get in there and not be able to be cleaned out. But see, now I can come in here, take the solvent, run it along my guide rails, run it around my breech face. Always wear safety glasses when you're doing this too, because if that splatter from the bristles kind of spritzes into your eye, it's very uncomfortable, and it can cause damage and harm. So always wear safety glasses. But you can see how I'm starting to get some carbon off of that slide with that brush. Now, you know, once I feel good, if I need to get in a little bit further, say I've got some gunk in some really bad places, I can use just regular bamboo barbecue skewers. These you just find at any store, but the great thing about them is they have a nice sharp tip. It's wood, so it's softer than the metal, so it's not going to scratch, and you've got a nice sharp tip. So see, what I can do is I can come in here underneath the extractor and scrape out any excess carbon that I have in those areas. And this one is not too bad, but see, I can get under those little fine areas. You can see how I'm starting to get some carbon scraped off in those areas and get any kind of gunk, you know, that I can pick out of there. So this is another great tool. Once you get most of your carbon off, you can take just a regular cleaning patch, or you can use an old cut up t-shirt or anything like that. And I can fold this up, put a little bit of solvent on it. So I've got some solvent. And now I'm just going to come in here and just really kind of rub into those areas and get any of that solvent, gunk, dust bunnies, any of that kind of stuff off.
What happens when you have a dirty gun?
Well, you just get a lot of carbon buildup. It can cause feeding issues. It can cause functionality issues.
Like what? Like a jam?
Like jams, those types of things. Now, a lot of your barrels have what used to be called, if you're familiar with rifling, this is important if you're shooting just lead jacketed ammunition. A lot of your conventional barrels have rifling in them. Now, this is some very pitted rifling, but your rifling has these grooves in them. So if you've ever seen the old TV show with James Bond where the logo comes in, you know, and this in there, it's rifling, and it's much like throwing a football. You put a little bit of a twist into it. That's what stabilizes it in flight. Now, a lot of your modern day duty guns, like the Glocks and SIGs and the modern stuff, rather than it being a groove, it's actually like a speed bump. And it's like polygon rifling. Now what that means is it gives it a much tighter tolerance around the bullet. So if you're shooting lead out of your gun, it can slow the bullet down because some of that lead sticks to the barrel. And as it slows the bullet down, now if you get an overpressure behind the bullet because of that, you can blow your gun up. So it's very important that you clean the lead. Just don't even shoot non-jacketed ammunition out of a modern duty gun. such as just a lead bullet, where you shoot jacketed stuff. Okay, here's a lead bullet. Now, if I were to take this lead bullet and just run it across the table, there'd be a big streak on there, right? It'll do the same thing in the barrel of your gun. Now, you get enough of that lead buildup inside of your barrel, it'll eventually slow the bullet down, causing an overpressure of gas here, and your gun can blow up as a result. I have seen Glocks blow up after just 20 rounds of shooting
Lead.
home cast lead ammunition.
Right.
So whenever you shoot ammo out of a modern sporting gun such as a Glock, you want to use jacketed ammunition. And this is basically, you've got the lead bullet, but there's a little copper jacket on it. And that copper jacket keeps it from laying down that lead in the barrel of your gun. So we have aluminum cases, we have nickel, we have steel, and we have brass.
Which one leaves the most residue?
It depends on the powder and the bullet. So the casings don't really do much, other than sometimes your gun can be more finicky with those particular cases. The main thing, the reason why there's different cases, is because of reloading capabilities. Here in the U.S., we have a tendency to reload our ammunition. So when we reload our ammunition, we want a metal that doesn't go through fatigue as often. So anything like brass, which has a good stretching quality to it, you can shoot it, it's going to expand slightly, then you can resize it to reload it. You can shoot it, expand slightly, resize it to reload it. But other metals such as steel or aluminum, they will go through metal fatigue. So you would never want to reload with this type of ammunition. So a lot of times this is more designed for disposable use versus the more expensive nickel and brass type of cases that can stretch, so you can use them over and over again. So a lot of times this ammo is much less expensive than this, because these were meant to be disposable, so it's a much cheaper steel.
Most people aren't reloading their ammunition. Right? So if they go with the cheaper, not full metal jacket,
it should be fine. You just want to find out if it works in your gun, because there was like 22s that people would bring me a 22 and sell it to me for $20 because they're like, it doesn't work, and then I would go to Walmart and buy high velocity 22 ammo and put it in the gun, and it ran like a champ.
Because they were just using
using cheap 22 ammo, which is fine in some guns, just not in those. So now that we've used the solvent, we've kind of gone through. I do need to do the barrel. So let's do the barrel. So on the barrel, I'm going to use my solvent on my feed ramp. Make sure that's nice and clean. Kind of go around this breech area of the barrel, the chambering area. Kind of run my little barbecue skewer in there. Look how I got little chunks of carbon off of there. You see that? I can take my brush and kind of go in there a little bit. But now I need to run through the barrel. So I'm going to take my cleaning brush. I'm going to dip it in my solvent, kind of tap off any excess, and now I'm going to run it from the back of the barrel forward. Now the reason I come from the back of the barrel is because right here on your barrel you can see this little bevel. That's the crown. And you want to protect the crown as much as possible, because when your bullet comes out of your barrel, it has to have an equal amount of pressure on all sides of the bullet. If it doesn't, if it's off just a little bit, there's a scratch or a gouge in that crown, and it's off my bullet slightly. So I want to protect the crown as much as possible. So I'm going to come from the back of the barrel and then just kind of run it back and forth a few times. See, if I were to come in this way, you can see how I could potentially, with the cleaning rod, gouge my crown. So I want to come from the back as much as possible. Okay. Now that I've done that a few times, I'm going to take my cleaning patch, wipe off any of that excess, and then I'm going to use one of these little eyelet looking components, and I am going to...
Like a big needle.
Looks like a big needle, just like that. You see that? Now I'm going to run it through my barrel.
Oh, look at that. It's way dirty.
Way dirty. You see that? Pretty nasty stuff, right?
I'm afraid to see what my Glock would look like.
So we're going to run that through there.
So do you want to keep using those pads until they come out clean?
Pretty much. Now, it's not completely critical. You want to make sure you can use a nylon brush where this is not copper, but this is nylon. The copper is really good at removing the lead. So if you were shooting lead out of your Glock, which I do not ever recommend, but say you accidentally do, use a copper brush to get that lead off. The nylon might not be strong enough. But run it through several times and get it out of there. So now that I've kind of run that through, feel pretty good about that.
Is there a solvent on those tissues?
No, not on these. I just ran the solvent through the brush.
Right. Okay.
These were just kind of dry patches. Now, you could run some solvent on a patch if you want and run it through a few times and then run a few clean patches. But now that I've kind of gone through, I'm going to wipe off any of the excess solvent that I've got on my components.
What happens if you don't get it all?
The solvent?
Yeah.
It's not going to be the end of the world. It's just the solvent will also remove anything that protects the gun from corrosion. So the reason why we use the oil now is because we use the solvent. You want to try and get as much of it off as you can. That's why it's also important you don't get anything in the firing pin holes in these areas. Just keep it kind of clean. And I'm just going to kind of clean up a little bit, on the guide rails. Now that I've gone through and kind of hit everything with my solvent, next I am going to just kind of get rid of those cleaning patches. And I am going to cut this a little bit smaller. That seemed to be the perfect size. You can use an old t-shirt. You can buy these patches specifically, But
Old underwear with holes in it.
Old underwear with holes in them.
Yeah.
You name it.
Sorry, dude, you're losing your underwear.
Your face mask.
Oh, yeah.
So now we're going to use a little bit of oil. Now you can use a rem oil. Hops does make a lubricating oil as well. But we need to use an oil because otherwise we have now taken off stuff that can protect the gun from corrosion. Never over oil your gun. A lot of people have a tendency to over oil their gun, and this is important because if you get too much oil in there, you're now giving it a chance to collect dust and lint and gunk, and just like you get gunk inside of your phone, if you've ever taken off your phone case and seen all the gunk inside of there, well, your gun gets the same way. And so we want to keep all that stuff from getting gunked up in there. So I am just going to spritz a little bit of oil, just a touch, on a cleaning patch. And I'm going to come in here and I am going to wipe down the guide rails, the breech face. And because I did get some of that solvent on the outside of my slide, I'm going to wipe that down. And then my barrel.
So it's a little bit of grease so it slides better, right?
Yep.
But
and
not
then,
too much.
Yeah, not too much. And then I'm going to just run it through the barrel. Because all I'm doing is trying to protect it from corrosion. So that's it. So now I've got, just kind of like the way you butter a pan before you put it in the oven. Now, it's your choice if you feel like you need to, I did that I put that barrel in there basically just by taking the barrel, putting it through the muzzle, dropping it into place, and sliding it back. Okay? Now my cleaning rod, on a Glock, it's not critical. You don't really need to clean these. If you're having some feeding problems, yeah, it wouldn't hurt to throw that in a solvent tank and let it come out and then spritz it with a little bit of oil. But generally, I've found that you don't really need to unless you're having functionality problems. So there's our button. The button goes through the hole on the front of the slide, and the back end just engages that component right there. So I'm just going to set that in there and put that in there like that. You can see how there's these notches here in the back. Okay, so I will line those up. Just like that. And I take the top, once I feel like they're lined up, I just go like this. That's it.
And that's all.
Now, I'm going to wipe off, take a clean rag with nothing on it, and wipe off any excess on the exterior of the gun. And the reason why is because if you go and put this in your coat pocket or put this in your bag or whatever, it's going to look like you were carrying potato chips in your pocket. So you don't want you want to get off any of that excess oil or grease.
And that's just a clean patch, right?
It's just a clean patch, nothing on it.
Will that get rid of fingerprints too when you're ready to toss the gun? Oh, no comment.
So there we go. There's our cleaned Glock.
Nice. So now when you're doing it at home, how long does it take you?
Typically about 3 or 4 minutes.
That's it.
That's it.
And it gets clean enough.
Run it through, run it through, run it through, run it through. Then clean off the excess. Use the oil, use the oil, use the oil, use the oil.
Awesome.
Put it together.
Have you ever messed up and then done it and then tried to shoot your gun? Like put the pieces in wrong?
No, not with a no, not really.
Not that you'd admit.
Not that I know. The only thing you can really do wrong is putting the gun together wrong, or getting it out of sequence, or not if you're shooting like corrosive ammunition, you need to clean your gun immediately after shooting it. And corrosive ammunition is ammunition that comes typically Berdan primed. It's stuff you typically see with AK-47s calibers, or some of the more military calibers that were old Soviet block ammunition. And the old Soviet block ammunition was corrosive, and it's okay to shoot, but you got to make sure you clean your gun after using it. Otherwise, you will get corrosion like this. This is an AK-47 barrel that was not cleaned after using corrosive ammunition, and you can see how it looks like there's cavities in the rifling, and that's what corrosive ammunition will do. So over oiling the gun is one big one I've seen. People way over oil. They don't need to. If you do have some functionality issues, you can put a little bit of lubricant on the guide rails.
Without taking the whole thing apart.
Yeah, with like lithium grease and that kind of stuff. And like if you were to do that, lithium grease is just applied right here on these guide rails. And I don't have any to show you, but you can. It comes in like a little tube, and you can put a little bit of lithium grease here, and then that would fix a lot of the functionality issues if it's problematic. I will show you how to use a bore snake. So a bore snake, you can see how the bore snake has, I don't know if you can see that, but it has a copper brush built into this. I'm going to kind of turn it so you might be able to see it sparkling.
Let me see if I can get, oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah, so you have this copper brush that's integrated into the bore snake. And then down further, it's just a normal nylon type of almost like shoestring material, but more floppy. Okay, so what I do, and then it's weighted on this end. So the trick is you put on your solvent here on this end, and then on this end you can put a little bit of oil. And so how that works is you would drop the weighted end down your barrel like this, and then you just pull it through. So there's the brush part, and then there's the oil part. I've used this in the field with hunting rifles. I prefer to use it this way with hunting rifles out in the field, but generally if
Because less stuff to carry around.
just less stuff to, yeah, I mean, I usually carry it all around anyway, but this has served me well over the years, and it gives me a little bit more flexibility to get into the gunk and grime if it's way gunky and way grimy. I can really get the nicks and crannies out with these things.
And there you have it.
Yeah, there you have it. Glock's one of the easiest guns, I think, to take apart and clean.